Hey everybody, it's Ian the Off Kilter Crafter. I hope you're having a great day today. Well, this is it, guys. We have made it through all 10 months of Piazza, the puzzle mystery quilt. And as you can see, I've laid mine out. If you missed it, there was a big reveal over on the Cotton Cuts social media. So make sure to go check that out. And now it's time to put our quilts together. So today we're going to be tackling putting the Piazza large quilt together. Again, this is the colorway San Marco, and I absolutely love how this looks. It came out spectacularly. I need to sew it together like this, but I've at least put it up on my design wall so that way I know what it's going to look like when it comes together and have a better idea of how to fit the pieces together. So grab your instructions. You all have Clue 10 emailed in your email box, or you can wait for your clue to show up, which will also have the instructions as well. Either way, you have the instructions for Clue 10, so let's go ahead and start walking through how to put this beautiful quilt together. Guys, I can't tell you, I think this is probably my first or second favorite quilt from the Puzzle Mystery Quilt. I loved Name of the Rose. It was a beautiful quilt. I'm absolutely in love with Piazza and cannot wait for this to be a finished quilt. But before we get to a finished quilt, we actually have to sew it together. So let's go ahead and get started with our instructions. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our instructions. This is going to be a little bit of a different video because of how large this project is. It's hard for me to film it in my usual style. So we're going to be filming from this angle, and hopefully this will work out for everybody. I'm going to do my best to walk you through everything, but always refer to your instructions if you have any questions. And of course, you can leave questions down in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. You can also reach out to Cotton Cuts, help@cottoncuts.com. They'll be able to help you with anything that you may have, any questions that you may have, any problems that you may have. They'll be there to help you out. All right, so in this month's packet, and as you see, I've already opened my packet, so it's already up on the design wall. But in this month's packet, you'll have 8 strips of F fabric. So our F fabric, which is basically going to be our border if you did not want to add any extra borders. That's going to be the border around the quilt. We also have 4 squares of fabric D. I almost did not see our fabric D squares in this package because it is the same colorway as our binding. So make sure that you're paying attention. I almost didn't see those, but they are in there. Just keep an eye out for that. And then you also have your fabric for the binding. If you're going to be making your quilt larger, which I will be making my quilt larger, you will need to purchase extra fabric to make that border, to make that binding, to make that binding a little longer. You'll need to purchase a little extra fabric. I have done that. I did purchase a little extra fabric so that way I can add another border to it. I'm actually going to be using my D fabric, so I'm going to be using this blue kind of technical fabric. I'm going to be adding a border of that all the way around, and I even made my own keystones. And when I said keystone, I actually meant something different, but now I can't remember the name of what it is when you put a block in all 4 corners. My mind has just gone completely blank. It doesn't matter though. But these will be in all 4 corners. I'm going to be adding on another, this is about 6 inches that I'm adding on to each side. So each cornerstones, that's the word I was looking for, cornerstones. I'm going to be adding these cornerstones into all 4 of my corners, and I picked a block that very closely represented what I see in my quilt, so that's why I went with this design. I also forgot to mention that Cotton Cuts put in a little goodie for us in, I have my watch on so I can actually see what the camera sees. Cotton Cuts gave us a little goodie in this package, and we have I got a little keychain, like those old motel keychain keys. So I got one of those. I can't wait to put that on one of my my something. I'll put it on something, and I can't wait to, I love it. I love that look. It's very retro. All right. That, I think, includes everything inside of our packet. Remember that our quilt, if you're doing the large, finishes approximately 72 inches by 72 inches, and you'll need 4.5 yards of backing, and 80 by 80 of batting. So keep all that in mind when you're finishing your quilt. Let's go ahead and start putting ours actually together. I feel like a weather person standing in front of the weatherboard pointing things. All right, here we go. We're going to start off with step one. Remember, all of your seams, once again, are 1/4 of an inch. Your 1/4 of an inch is your 1/4 of an inch. If you've been working with a 1/4 of an inch on your machine, stick with it. Don't worry if it's not actually a 1/4 of an inch. As long as you are consistent, that is what is most important. All right, so step one, it says we're gonna make the center row of the quilt. So right here in the center, we're gonna be starting off with this. It says to join section 6, and I gotta find section 6, here we go. So this is 6 on either side here. We're gonna be joining section 6 to the right and left of section 3B. So basically we're going to start off in our center here. We're adding 6 on the left and right. And then we're going to be adding 7A to that. So we're going to be adding our 7As onto that. And then finally, section 2. So we're going to be adding section 2 onto that as well. So we're making our middle strip here using all of those, starting off with 3B. Moving to 6, 7A, and then 2 on either side. And we're going to be making one long strip that goes straight through the center of the quilt, as you can see. Let's go ahead and do that, and I'll come back when it's time to move on to step 2. Okay, I have sewn that middle row together. The pressing instructions are here on your instructions. It's the arrows. The center block, you actually press away from it. And then the other seams you'll press in. So out from the center, but all the rest of them are going to be in towards the center. So just follow the instructions that are here on your instructions. The arrows are what you're looking for the pressing instructions. But there we go. There's our first row. It's interesting to notice how much our seam allowances take up whenever we put them all together. So our quilt is going to get a little bit smaller because I just had them laid out with fabrics, like fabric to fabric, basically. When you add the seam allowance, it does eat up a little bit of space, but that's to be expected, normal, all that kind of stuff. All right, moving on to step 2, it says to join a section 2. Let's find section 2. Here's section 2 to the top, and section 6, excuse me. Section 2 and section 6, it's upside down. But section 2, section 6, we're going to be sewing them to 7A as shown. We're going to be making 2 of these. So we did that on our left and right. Now we're doing it on our up and down. We're going to be sewing 2 of these. You're going to sew your top and your bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that. Again, your pressing instructions are on your instructions, and they say to press towards our 7A. So 2 will be pressed towards 7A, 6 will be pressed towards 7A. I'm going to go ahead and sew both of those, and I'll come back when it's time to move on to our next step. All right, I finished step 2. I have sewn my vertical pieces together. I know it gets a little lost because I've got a lot going here on the board, but I've completed the top and the bottom portion. That will be coming in very soon, but we're going to move on to step 3. And it says we're going to make the top left and bottom right sections. So we're going to be making top right, top left and bottom right sections. It's going to be exactly the same. They're basically kind of rotations of each other. So what we're going to be doing I'm going to focus in up over here so that way it's a little easier to see than down there. We have, for step 3, it actually has point steps to it. So we're going to join sections 8A and 4. So we have 8A, and I've got to find it on here, 8A and 4. So 8A and 4 are going to be combined. They are the same size right here. So we're going to go ahead and sew those first. Then it tells us we're going to join sections 5A and 9. This is my 9. So we're going to sew 5A and 9 together. And then we're going to sew 3.2 to the top of 3.1. So we're sewing these 2 together, we're sewing these 2 together, and then we're going to join them along this seam right here. So that way we create a square using those 4 pieces. Then we're going to move on to 3.4. We're going to join 5B. Where is 5B? We have 5B right here. And 1B. So this is 1B. 5B, 1B. We're going to sew those together. And then we're going to sew step 3.4 to step 3.3. So we're going to sew our, let's see here. Okay, so this equals the same as this square. So we're just going to add on this strip to the edge. Then, moving on to 3.6, it says to join 1A, which is this square, and 7B, which is this rectangle right here. So that's going to create a rectangle. And then we're going to sew a 3A to the end. So we're going to sew these two together to make this strip. Then we're going to add 3A onto that. And when we finish all of that, we're going to sew that onto this rectangle that we have completed. That is a lot of steps, but you can do it. So basically, sew these two together, sew these two together, then sew them together. Then come over here. We're going to do our 5B, 1B. We're going to sew these together, sew it onto here. Then we're going to do 1A, 7B, 3A, sew those together, and then sew them on to the larger square. Make sense? I think it will. Again, follow your instructions if you need any help, and I'll come back when it's time to move on to our next step, which will be step number 4. Okay, I finished step 3, which is to put the top left pieces together and the bottom right pieces together. Now we're going to be doing the same thing, but we're doing it mirror image. So step 4 says we're going to make the top right and bottom left sections. It's going to be exactly the same, basically. So starting with 4.1, we're going to be joining sections 4 and 9. So here is 4. And here is 9. We're going to be sewing those two together. Then we move up to 8A and 5A. We sew those two together. And then we sew this block together. So what we just sewed on top of the first step. So that's going to create the first one. Then, double checking here. Then we move on to 3A, 7B. So we sew together 3A, 7B. We sew these two together and sew them onto this square. Then we move up to the top and we sew 5B, 1B, 1A. No, 4, which one is that one? 1A, yeah, 1B and 1A. Okay, so I got confused because normally they don't put clues that, or pieces that close together. But we sew 5B, 1B, 1A. We sew those together and form the strip and sew that on top of all of that. Okay. I think we got it. Again, start with our 4 and 9. Then we go to 8A, 5A. Sew those together. Move over to 7B, 3A. Sew those together. Sew them onto what we just did. Then move up to the top. 5B, 1B, 1A. Sew all those together. And then sew it onto all of it. So we're going to make 2 of these because we've got our top right corner and then our bottom left corner. We're going to be sewing all 4 of those, or excuse me, all 2 of those. There's 4 corners, that's what I was thinking. Anyways, we're going to be sewing both of those and I'll come back when it's time to move on to the next step. Okay, I finished that. I have finished my bottom left portion and my top right portion. We have big squares now that we're working with, so let's move on to step 5. And it says to join a step 3 and a step 4 to the left and right of a step 2. And we're going to make 2 of these. So we have our middle section here. We have our left side, our right side, and all we're going to be doing is joining these seams together for the top and the bottom. You're going to do the same thing on the bottom, center section, connect one square, connect another square. Just that simple. We're going to be doing that. And whenever we're pressing them, by the way, there was a lot of pressing instructions on step 3 and 4. Just pay attention to the graphic to tell you which way to iron those seams. For this one, we're going to be ironing towards our center, which is great because remember our center, our very center of our quilt is pressed outwards. So these will be pressed inwards and we can line up on those seams to make it a lot easier. I'm very proud of my seam work on this one so far. My seams are coming out really well. There's a few kind of wobbles and bobbles and all that kind of stuff, but overall I'm very happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect the top and I'm going to connect the bottom, and then we'll move on to our next step. We're getting close. It doesn't seem like it, but we're actually getting really close to the end, and I'm super excited about that. So keep up the work. Let's finish step 5, and then we'll move on to step 6. All right, everybody, we've completed step 5. I basically have one big row, a medium-sized row, and then another bigger row down at the bottom. That is a mirror image of the top. We are so close, guys. All right, moving on to step 6. It says to sew a long F strip to the right of a section 8B. So our little flying geese blocks are 8B. And then we're going to also sew a strip of F to the left. So we're sewing a strip of F to the left and right and left of 8B. And we're going to make 4 of those in total. So obviously we're going to go around all 4 sides using it. Then it says for 6.2 to sew a D square, one of these, to each end of 6.1, and we're going to make 2 of them. So these will be the top and bottom borders. So you're going to sew F strip, 8B, F strip. You're going to do that 4 times, and then for 2 of them, you're going to add the D squares, and these are going to be your top and bottom rows. The ones that do not have the D squares are going to be your left and right side. I'm going to sew all of that together, and I'll come back when it's time to do the next step. Okay, I have put the borders together. They are not actually attached to anything yet, because of course we got to sew everything else together first, but they have been at least sewn, and we are now ready for step 7, which is the final assembly. How amazing is this? This is awesome. So for 7.1, it says to join step 5 to the top of step 1. So here's our step 1 that we did. We're going to attach step 5, and we're going to rotate the second step 5. So obviously it's going to turn around 180 degrees. If you had them just laying there, they would turn around 180 degrees. Again, I've put mine up so that way I can see what it looks like. But you'll put it on step 5 on top and on bottom of step 1. Add the side borders by matching and pinning the ends and the middles of the borders to the quilt and easing to fit. That's going to be a little complicated. So what's going to happen is, I'm going to use the top one here to demonstrate, but what we're going to do is we are going to pin our flying geese unit so that it fits right here at the very top. That's where I'm going to start at. Then I'm going to go over here to the ends. You got to sew on your sides first. Sew your side borders on first, and then do it at the top. Again, you're going to be pinning this flying geese so that it matches up with the pattern, and that way you're not getting your edges, your seams either high or low or left or right of where you're wanting to be. This is the only time I'm going to use pins, and I don't even use pins. I use Wonder Clips, so that way I don't stab myself. But you'll do your sides first, getting those lined up. Does it even say? No, it just says, oh, add side borders. It says add side borders. So we're going to add our side borders, matching up our 2 sides so that they are in line with the pattern. I can't think today. I'm so excited about getting it finished. It's hard for me to think. All right, so we put on our side borders. Then we put on our top border. And again, top and bottom, you're going to align with this flying geese. You're also going to match up. It's not aligned here on my design board, but we're going to match these up so that way it lines up like so. And you may have to kind of finagle it a little bit, easing it in, stretching it out, figuring out how to kind of get that in there. It will work. It's just going to take a little finagling to make it work. So once we do that, we are done. So I'm going to take a while. I'm going to go sew all of this together. We've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more seams to do, and then we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and sew those 6 seams together, and I'll come back when it's time to show it all off. All right, guys, this is it. We are done with our Piazza. This is the final product for the large Piazza. This one is the colorway San Marco. You'll notice that the light has sort of changed a little bit because it did take me most of the day to get this done, but I am so happy with how it turned out. It looks so great, and I cannot wait to add the extra borders to it to make it a little bit bigger, because y'all know I like a big quilt, and I cannot lie. But it is done. I've got to trim off a few of the threads and get it a little cleaned up, but it is done. It looks amazing, and I can't wait to see what all the colorways look like. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another amazing puzzle mystery quilt, and I hope that you will continue on with me on the next one. We're currently working on, of course, Village Green. I will continue working on that, and I hope to see you in the fall for the fall 2023 puzzle mystery quilt. Can't wait to find out what that one is going to be.